Good morning. You're watching a remote broadcast of Business World Live. I'm Jess De Los Santos. It's 10:30 a.m. this Wednesday in Manila. We are about an hour into the trading day. Let's go straight to our top story. Lawmakers are now moving to restart the economy amid the pandemic with the approval of a 1.3 trillion peso stimulus package at the House committee level. The Defeat COVID-19 Committee passed on first reading the substitute bill for the proposed Philippine Economic Stimulus Act, or PESA. Majority Leader, later Representative Martin Romualdez, said the bill will be taken up at the plenary this week. He said there is a big need to jumpstart economic activities the soonest time possible to ensure the survival of the nation. The PESA bill is expected to be consolidated with House Bill 6709, or the proposed COVID-19 Unemployment Reduction Economic Stimulus, or CURES, filed by the House leadership. CURES has set a stimulus package worth 1.5 trillion pesos. The consolidated version of the proposed stimulus measure is expected to be passed before the Congress adjourns next week, June 3rd. The CURES bill seeks to allocate at least 500 billion pesos for 3 years through 2022 for infrastructure and job creations, especially in the provinces. On the other hand, the PESA bill seeks to earmark 155 billion pesos this year to a wage subsidy program for private sector workers affected by the lockdown. The PESA bill also seeks the appropriation of 650 billion pesos for the Build program for 3 years starting 2021. The enhanced Build is seen to create 1.5 billion jobs. The proposed measure also wants to allocate 20 billion pesos for mass testing. The PESA bill is also seen to encourage banks and financial institutions under the BSP supervision to extend the term or agree to the restructuring of loans. And speaking of restarting the economy, MMDA General Manager Jojo Garcia said all of Metro Manila's 17 mayors are backing the shift of the region to a general community quarantine, or GCQ, starting June 1st. Garcia said the Metro Manila Council will formally recommend the shift to the IATF. Malacanang said the IATF may decide by Wednesday night, and that's tonight, on the fate of Metro Manila come June 1. Time now to have a quick check of the markets on the second trading day of the week here. As you can see, the index extending the losses that we saw yesterday. It is now down 1 1/10% here. Let's try to have a quick check now of the leaders and the laggards, at least for morning trade here. You can see. Let's refresh this for a bit, just to have a fresh look really at who's leading the pack here. You'd see FGen still pretty much on top here. It is up 14 4/10%. That's after Singapore's Valorous is seeking to acquire as much as 9% stake in the power producer here. That's for a max of 7.29 billion shares. And looking at the stock here again, FGen is up 14 4/10%. That tender offer was supposed to start at least 9 a.m. this morning. Now, also, as you can see here, like what I mentioned earlier, the index extending the losses that we saw yesterday, pretty much according to analysts, that drop that we saw on Tuesday is really due to the possibility of loosening restrictions once the MECQ lapses. That pretty much driving investors to fear that coronavirus cases might in fact escalate. Now, while the local bourse managed to recover from the huge losses that we saw in early morning trade of Tuesday, it still ended in the red, down 0.8%. Jonathan Ravela, chief market strategist of BDO, told Bloomberg that investors are pocketing gains in anticipation of the expected lifting of the ECQ, all due to fear that it might actually escalate infections due to lack of clear indication that the curve has already been flattened. Jabaton Chanko of Phil Stocks pretty much echoes that as well. According to him, the easing puts into question whether these areas are really prepared for looser restrictions. According to him as well, we're still trapped in that health or economy dilemma. Further, that balance pretty much really dragging the local market as investor confidence remains tempered. But really, the most striking movement of yesterday's trade Jollibee's fall here. Jollibee ended the day down 10.5%, but even sank as deep as 12%. That decline came after a government agency floated once again the proposal to tax junk food, and that sent a number, not just Jollibee here, that sent a number of restaurant and food stocks falling on Tuesday. We saw Jollibee declining 10.5%. Max is also down 6.3%. We're talking about Tuesday trade here. Shakey's also was in the red at 3.5%. Likewise, URC and Age Alliance Global as well, which is of course holds a majority stake in a McDonald's franchise here in the Philippines. According to Rachel Cruz of AP Securities, investors are growing cautious as these companies face bleaker prospects. If we can just show the chart here showing how those food stocks were actually performing in yesterday's trade, you can see here majority of them were in the red again. According to Rachel Cruz of AP Securities here, investors were growing cautious as these companies face bleaker prospects. Add to that the weakening consumer spending. On Jollibee, according to her, it's going to be an additional headwind apart from that 7 billion peso it's allocating for rationalization of operations. However, as you can see here, Jollibee recovering from that drop yesterday. It is now up close to 3%, 2.94% to be exact. Now, despite and at the same time, you have one would-be consumer stock also remaining unfazed despite the turmoil in the market. Again, we've reported this time and again, you have a Merrimart pushing through with its IPO, and this time around, they are reporting that their IPO is oversubscribed at 2.07 times the available allocation. Now, offer period for Merrimart is actually going to start today, and the CLED firm's book build is indicating pretty much that they are oversubscribed. And again, they're setting the price of their IPO at 1 peso a share. Of offer period is going to start May 27. Listing date expected is going to be at June 15, and pretty much the profit from this public listing is really going to be for store network and expansion. In fact, they are eyeing to build 1,200 stores by 2030, but it's not as a bright picture here for one other stock here. I'm talking about Petron. Things looking gloomy still for the oil refiner. That's after they have incurred close to 5 billion pesos in losses. If you try to take a look at the chart here, try to take a look at the figures as to how Petron did perform for the first quarter of 2020. That is a net loss of 4.9 billion pesos compared to the net income that they had in the first 3 months of 2019, which was at 1.3 billion pesos, according to the company. Net loss due to significant inventory losses as prices collapsed in both local and international markets. Overall revenues also dropped by 16%, pretty much pulled down by lower sales as demand dropped during the lockdown period. Likewise, you have combined sales volume from Malaysia and the Philippines also coming in slower to the tune of 24.7 million barrels compared to the over 26 million barrels that they had in 2019. According to their president and CEO, Ramon Ang, the oil industry in general is in a rough phase, impacting oil demand and prices, especially as domestic consumption has gone down, particularly in retail and aviation. Petron has now employed cost-saving measures, even temporarily shutting down some of its refilling stations and shortening operation hours. According to Ang, recovery will depend primarily on the lifting of quarantine measures and ultimately the development of a vaccine to restore mobility. Now, looking at the price movement here of Petron, you'd see here the stock is not much of a movement here, still here for Petron. The stock still priced at 2 pesos and 93 centavos a piece. Now, moving on to other stories here, you have the Asian Development Bank. According to them, they will loan $400 billion to the Philippines to boost the domestic capital market and the infrastructure financing efforts as well. This is the country banks on a build to help buoy the economy, even hoping to raise infra spending to 7% of GDP by 2022. That so far, though, has only accounted for 3.8% of GDP in 2020. So far, total lending from ADB now at $2.1 billion this year after it first extended a $1.5 billion loan for COVID response. Again, a quick check of the markets here. The market's still down 1.1% to 5,434 at the moment. NEDA says the government should continue supporting small businesses and the agriculture sector even after lockdown measures are lifted. The agency explains that MSMEs as well as farmers and fisherfolk will continue to struggle and require help to sustain and restore their livelihood. To help them get up on their feet, NEDA says they should be given access to grants or soft loans through a guarantee fund worth about 800 billion pesos. The agency said affected farm workers, fishermen, and other enterprise owners should also receive help through zero interest, no collateral, and longer-term credit programs. NEDA also recommended additional support programs for businesses such as deferment of debt payments and tax credits. Agriculture Secretary William Dar is pushing for an agri-driven approach to stimulate economic recovery. In order to do this, Dar is proposing a 66 billion peso budget to fund his plant program to expand food supply and stabilize food prices. Dar also emphasized the importance of more private partnership with LGUs to improve productivity and food supply chain through farm consolidation, better logistics, and stronger marketing. The proposal is now being discussed in Congress as part of the Philippine Economic Stimulus Act. Meanwhile, Dar also announced that the Philippines is joining field trials for a potential vaccine against African swine fever. The vaccine was developed by Purbright Institute in the UK. Recall that over 280,000 pigs have been culled in the country to contain ASF. Now, the insurance industry booked double-digit growth in 2019. That's on the back of a spike in the life insurance sector's net profit. Insurance Commissioner Dennis Funa says that the net income of the insurance industry jumped over 20% last year from 37.5 billion pesos in 2018. This is largely due to the life insurance sector growing 25.8% in 2019. On the other hand, the non-life insurance sector's net worth also jumped 19% year on year. However, Funa notes that these figures were obtained prior to the onset of the community quarantine in the country. Despite the looming possibility of restrictions being eased in the metro and areas under modified enhanced community quarantine, most organizations aren't so keen just yet on deploying their full workforce. And with the work from home setup expected to stay in place for the near future, how can organizations better adapt to an extended workplace? Now, to share her thoughts with us, we have Vera, the CEO of Talentview. Good morning, Ange. Great to have you here with us on the show. Ange, let's get right to it. For how long do you think this extended workplace setup is going to last beyond the pandemic? Do you think it's here to stay? And that organizations might have to rethink the way they do things from here on?
Right. Good morning, Jess. Thank you for having me. Of course, the pandemic, we really wish that it would be better soon. But we're seeing companies now globally announcing even extending the work from home setup until next year. So this is not a surprise for us. We might even see some larger companies here, such as the BPOs, extending this setup for their respective companies.
But regarding that, do you think the hybrid model will work at this stage? And how should companies actually rationalize their workforce? Like, for example, do you put in 50% of the workforce going physically to the office, and at the same time you have another 50% going to at least doing work from home? So what's the ideal setup there?
Right. So I guess it's not one size fits all. We'll really have to look at the industry that the company is in. They have to make sure that at the end of the day, they serve their customers. That's the only way that they'll be able to sustain themselves during this crisis. And we've also designed what we call an extended workplace design at Talentview, just talking about the 6 critical things that are important for every company to consider. So although there's no one size fits all, there are 6 things that you should check off your checklist to make sure that you can sustain your business. The first one is enhanced leadership communication. Leaders have to be at the very forefront of this. They have to make the announcements. They have to show care. They have to be enabling productive work, as you mentioned, right? People have to
Mhm.
remain productive, whether that's in the office or whether that's through their homes or their extended workplace. The second is resilient implementation. Whatever technologies you're using, it must be able to run on mobile phones, on laptops, on personal computers, whatever devices your employees currently have. You can't insist that your server is at the office and everybody needs to be at the office regardless of the situation. The third is a culture and collaboration mindset. You definitely want to be thinking of this to make sure that you're taking care of your employees, to make sure that you're maintaining your company culture or even evolving it during this time, and making sure that still people work together even in the extended workplace environment. There's, of course, this is a given. I'm not going to go through the reliable and secure connectivity. We need this.
Mhm.
We can't really work if there's no internet that's acceptable at the current speed to serve our customers. Integration, optimized integration is also key. So putting together pieces of technology that take out redundant work, that allow people to be more efficient as they're running their day-to-day operations. And the last is data-driven change, taking a look at data and managing the changes that you need on an ongoing basis. Jess.
But I guess also that's easier said than done, that companies really have to adjust. Question now is, how exactly do they actually overcome challenges when it comes to connectivity? It's pretty much, of course, with the Philippines still lagging on that front.
Absolutely. That's always a given, right? Internet will always be a challenge. But I guess the trick there and the thing that organizations need to consider is what technologies will run with the lowest possible bandwidth. And that's where
Mhm.
you have all these messenger apps, collaboration tools, even recruitment tools that should allow you to put things together and become, seamless in the way that you're doing things, even if internet is going to be a restriction or a challenge for sure.
So, given that, what exact technologies should companies invest in, and where do you think is technology headed today?
All right. So you're looking at chat apps, you're looking at collaboration tools. So as a default, some of the small and medium enterprises, they're probably using Viber, they're probably using a Facebook Messenger, but you've got to evolve from that if you're a larger organization. You need to look
Mhm.
at tools like Workplace, which are collaboration platforms, allowing you to share video, go live, reach out to employees, work on projects, work on any tasks and culture activities that you have. We're even sharing on screen sample reports of recruitment technology. So obviously recruitment must carry on, must continue, but you can't do any job fairs, right? So how do you address that? You have video interview technology, you have virtual job fair technology that you can get into. There's a lot that you can explore, but I guess it always goes back also just to your objectives. Where are
Mhm.
you now with your people setup? Is it about maintaining and strengthening your current employees and your current culture? Or is it about growing and adding more people to your organization at this point?
Okay, let's touch more on recruitment later, but for now, let's focus more on the digital work that's happening at least. One of the challenges as well would have to be security. That definitely is going to be a risk. How will firms protect their company in terms of data security and management?
Mhm. All right. That's really a great question because a lot of the tools we're using now, whether these are Viber, WhatsApp, Messenger, these are consumer tools. And that means you see ads. That means you don't own your data. And again, if you're a larger organization and you want to make sure that the data of your customers is secure, the data of your employees are secure, you definitely need to look at enterprise applications. You need to look at tools that at the end of the day, you practically own that data and have control over how you use that data. So again, it will be tweaked, I guess, based on the size and nature of your organization, Jess.
And then at the same time, on one hand, you also have to be concerned about how you handle corruption and fraud within the company, given the lack of physical supervision. So, how's this going to change things?
Absolutely. So you've got your banks, right, which are essential services. having their workforce work remotely. You've got BPOs that have very confidential information, sometimes also serving financial institutions. So again, aside from making sure that the applications you use are enterprise applications, you definitely also want to pound on that culture and pound on that leadership side of things. So I was talking earlier about enhanced leadership communication. At the end of the day, there will really be people who, if they want to circumnavigate some rules, it also happens in the live workplace anyway, right? So again, it has to be about culture building. It's not a soft thing to worry about, especially during this time. It's about thinking of your values and making sure these values translate to the people that are working in their extended workplaces, even as they're doing their works individually and collaborating through apps and technology.
And maybe that's precisely the reason as well. That's why that's the first phase of the design that you guys developed as well. Now,
Absolutely.
Now, question is this going to be a healthy way of doing things, at least from the point of view of the employee? Because time and again, we've heard people complain of longer work hours given this current setup and how a work from home model has pretty much blurred the work-life balance for some of them.
Correct. That's absolutely true. We were hearing the same thing. And I guess this is where we find ourselves in, right? It's forced digital disruption. A lot of companies always talk about this, but they haven't really had that 100% push. But because of this crisis, it really is a forced digital disruption where we have no choice. A lot of companies still don't have 100% of their workforce in their offices, in their workplaces. And so you've got to work with that extended workplace where your employees are, and because of that, you have to find a way. You have to find a way to power through, I would say. That's really all there is. So for the employee side, you have to start thinking about how to schedule that also from an employee standpoint, managing their work day to day, even if they're not in the office. um you're right, where you're right in what you said, where people sometimes feel burnout because they don't have a schedule, they don't have a routine. And that's something that organizations have to come to terms with and work on. There is influence that we can pass on when we're working with our employees. So whether that's structuring their meetings within certain hours, or whether that's even providing support, wellness activities, engagement activities for them to get more balance in their day, that's something that companies should definitely influence.
So you think also it's about time, given if companies are going to pursue this hybrid model, it's about time for them to actually rethink as well the structure by which they actually deploy work to their employees, given the digital setup.
Absolutely. It's the right tools and the right strategy to manage the workforce in this kind of hybrid setup, as you mentioned.
Now, earlier you were talking about the recruitment process. How might the extended workplace setup also change this whole recruitment process?
Okay, so this one is very drastic. So we were working with a lot of organizations where obviously their typical methods of recruiting people, if they are still hiring, would be your job fairs, would be your career fairs, would be your walk-in interviews or walk-in applications. And at this point, that's practically not possible, right? Unless you probably do a six feet distance from each other when you're doing the interviews, but then you still will not be able to get your critical volumes. So there are technologies in place. You can do virtual recruitment job fairs. You can do video interviews. And in fact, because there are video capabilities now that are practically present in a lot of technologies we're working with, right? You can do more. You don't even have to be on the other side interviewing an applicant. You can
Mhm.
shoot a video, they can record their answers, and you can watch and review as you see fit. You can pass this on to business managers. It's easier for the company to process applications. But another thing to look at is on the perspective of the applicant. It's also easier for them because now there are limitations in transportation, there are limitations in logistics. So you definitely want solutions that are also easy for your applicants to get on board with. So whether that's interviewing, onboarding, filling out requirements, or filling out their CVs online, there are so many technologies that you can explore to get that done today. And companies need to face that shift because this is the now normal. This is what they have to deal with if you really want to hire volume and actually to hire at all. So you definitely want to explore a different way and a rethink of your recruitment process.
But do you think this might prove to be a setback, at least for those job seekers who are in areas with poor connectivity? We're talking possibly rural areas here.
Yes, absolutely. There could be setbacks, but again, there are also technologies that have overcome that bandwidth issue. So before, when we were watching Facebook video on our phones, it would always lag. But if you look today, right, anyone just watches videos on YouTube and Facebook, and it's so easy to load them. And that's something to think about when we're implementing any sort of technology for the organization of today. Is how capable is it to be running on the kind of bandwidth that we have, and how efficient is it in addressing the objectives that we have, whether that's in recruitment, learning and development, or overall company objectives.
And that
Jeff.
leads me to my next question here. How does this change the requirements, or at least the need for seekers to actually upskill?
Okay, very, very good input. We're not just expecting companies to level up. We're also expecting applicants and job seekers to level up. So they have to get on board with these technologies, because even when they get hired, they're going to start work in a very virtual setup. And if the application process alone, they're not able to already bridge that gap and learn the new skills and learn the new technologies, how can we expect them to be left alone in their home, working on supporting clients, working on documents, working on files? So that's two parts there. It's leveling up the organization, but also it's forced digital disruption for applicants for sure.
Okay, thank you for your insights, and definitely this new model that we're experiencing in terms of the workplace here, it's really going to require employees, companies, at the same time, job seekers to actually up the game. Thank you very much for your insights,
Absolutely.
and Vera, CEO of
Thank you,
Talent.
Jess. Thank you for having me. Bye.
Okay, before we end the broadcast, let's have a quick check of what's happening in the markets here. You see the PSEI not finding any respite this Wednesday morning. Still in the red here. It is down 1 and 2 tenths of 8%. Still at the 5,400 level, it is down to 5,430.90, as you can see in this chart right here. Now, a quick check of the leaders and the laggards for the day. Let's try to refresh the chart first. You'd see here, first gen still holding strong for the day. It is up close to 15%. That's after, again, you have there Singapore's Valorous seeking to acquire as much as 9% stake in the power producer. That's for a maximum of 7.3 billion pesos. Should this push through, that will boost Valorous's total shareholdings to 9.65%. Again, like what I mentioned earlier, tender offer begins today. In fact, we did see as well First Gen being a subsidiary of First Philippine Holdings. We saw Philippine Holdings, in fact, rising as much as 6.9% earlier in the day. Also worth noting here is how some consumer stocks are already rising here. Jollibee, for one, making that recovery. It is up 2 and 7 tenths of 8%. Also worth noting here, Bloomberry Resorts is now up 2 and 3 tenths of 8%. That's after you have your Okada Manila declaring that they are going to lay off around 1,000 employees here. A number of, however, on the losing end here, you have JG Summit. It is down 3 and 4 tenths of 8%. ICTSI not faring well as well for Wednesday morning. It is down 3 and 2 tenths of 8%. But let's take a look at one other consumer stock here that is 8%. That's despite them declaring that they are going to open 25 new Pure Gold stores and that they are going to offer online grocery shopping to 100 stores. Again, the stock is now down to 46 pesos and 35 centavos a piece. Lastly, let's have a look at ABS-CBN. That's after its franchise went back to square one in Congress yesterday. You also have the NTC asking the SC or the Supreme Court to deny ABS-CBN's petition to stop the implementation of the cease and desist order due to lack of merit. As you can see, ABS now in the green. That's after plunging as much as 7% yesterday. It is now up 1.25% to 14 pesos and 68 centavos a piece. And now I'm just going to dump some data here from the BSP. January net foreign direct investment inflows came in at $657 million. That is a jump of 12.1% year on year, according to BSP Governor Ben Jokno. The peso will remain stable as reserves remain healthy. According to him as well, the decline in remittance won't in fact destabilize the peso. And that's a first look into the business day this Wednesday, May 27, 2020. Catch us again tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. I'm Jess De Los Santos. We are One News.